God gave us communion so we would be centered around the work that he did for us, that our Passover lamb did for us. And genuine churches 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, if the Lord tarries, will be taking communion around the cross, and it will help to keep the church centered. Does that mean that there aren't churches that lose it and go off in other directions? No, there certainly are. There's certainly churches that don't see these things as important, or that take communion for other reasons. They don't keep centered around it. But also it reminds us that Jesus will come back one day. That one day the sky will part, and Jesus will come through in all of his glory. And I've shared before that I think that we are in a birth pain right now, and it sure seems like we can't go on without Jesus returning pretty soon. The Bible says in the last days, lawlessness will increase. In the last days, the love of many will grow cold. In the last days, false teachers will abound. And we could go on. So many things are true about the days that we live in. Now, what do we do if we think we're living in the last days? If somebody gives you a book that Jesus is going to come back in the next year, what are you supposed to do? Occupy until he comes. Take care of your family. Do what you would normally do to make sure that you're okay. The Bible says if someone doesn't provide for his family, he's worse than an infidel. In 1844, there was the Great Disappointment. William Miller had declared that Jesus was going to come back before 1844. So the closer they got to 1844, people stopped working their land. They sold their farms. They sold the things that they had, gave it to people who were spreading the gospel. And then Jesus didn't come back in 1844, and they didn't have anything for their families. And that's why this hyper sensationalized messages are dangerous. Because sometimes people think, well, we're going to go. I don't need to worry about, I don't need to worry about retirement. No, you need to worry about taking care of your family. You need to worry about taking care of your wife in retirement. Because the man that doesn't take care of his family is worse than an infidel. So we occupy until he comes. Do I have my eyes on the skies? Yes. Do I watch the news and think he's got to come back this year? Yes. Do I think it's possible it could be another 50, 100, whatever? Yeah. He'll come back in the day he decides to come back. Not when we think he should come back. I like to think, what did people think during World War II when Hitler was around, attacking the Jews? And you read that in Revelation that the Antichrist attacks the Jews. How many people do you think thought Hitler was the Antichrist? By the way, I think he was an Antichrist. But if I were alive in those days, I'd have been like, get ready, it's happening. Right? Think about 1948, just a few years later after World War II, when Israel became a nation. I wasn't born yet, but if I were and old enough to get it, I'd be like, Israel's a nation again. Or 1967, which I was 7 years old in 67, when Jerusalem came under Israeli control again. And that's prophesied. All of this, pick your staff up, be ready to go. Are you ready? That's the idea. When we take communion, we're supposed to take often. It is like a Passover, and we are to eat it with our belt on and our staff, ready to go. But if Jesus doesn't come back, we occupy. We occupy until he comes, because no one knows. Why do you think Jesus said, no one knows the day I'm coming back, not even the Son and not even the angels? So that there could be someone who could tell you that they knew the 2 days that Jesus was going to come. And we are, and I keep saying this, but it's so true, we're about to hit a whole lot of date setters. A whole lot of people are going to be setting dates. So just ignore them, persevere, look to the skies. Every time you see a neat set of clouds, think of the return of Jesus, because one day it's going to happen, and he's going to return because he said that he did, and what a day it will be. And I vote for my lifetime, by the way. I vote for that. I want to be one of those who's changed in a moment, in twinkling of an eye. But rarely do we think of communion as proclaiming the death of Christ until he comes. When we take communion, we are proclaiming his death. When they took Passover, they were proclaiming the death of the Passover lambs that delivered them from slavery as a memorial, and they were killing lambs as a memorial to it. And we think of the Passover lamb that takes away the sins of the world, our Passover lamb, according to 1 Corinthians. So these things are things that just help us as we approach communion. Next week, we'll tie them in a little bit better as we look at the things about communion that we can solidly see from the Scriptures. But I do think that this foundation, this memorial meal that communion launches off of, is very important. The more we know about it, the more we can understand communion.